It was just past midnight when someone knocked on my apartment door hard enough to rattle the frame. I was standing in my living room with a half-eaten sandwich in my hand, still in my work clothes, the television murmuring to itself in the background. Nobody ever comes by that late. Not anymore. After my divorce 2 years ago, my world got quiet. I kept it that way on purpose. I live in a small place in Seattle. Thin walls, old carpet. You can hear your neighbors arguing if you listen too closely. I work as a project manager for a construction company. My days are meetings, deadlines, and emails. My evenings are simple. Dinner, a run in the morning, sleep, repeat. It's not exciting, but it's steady. The knocking came again. I opened the door and forgot how to breathe. Emma stood there, soaked from the rain. Her hair clung to her cheeks. Her eyes were red and swollen like she'd been crying for hours. In her hands was a thick envelope, bent from the weather. I hadn't seen her in 5 years. Emma was my ex-wife Claire's younger sister. The last time I saw her, she was a loud art student with paint on her jeans and opinions about everything. 23 and restless. Now she looked older, worn down, like life had pressed on her harder than it should have. "Ryan," she said, her voice barely holding together, "I need your help." I just stared at her. We were never close. Even when I was married to her sister, we spoke in passing. Small talk at holidays. That was it. "Can I come in?" she asked. I stepped aside. She walked in without another word, leaving wet footprints across my floor. She sat on the couch, shaking. Not just from the cold, from fear. I sat across from her. "Does Claire know you're here?" She shook her head quickly. "No, and she can't. Nobody can." She opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. She handed them to me. At the top was a marriage license, her name already filled in. At the bottom, a blank line, signature of husband. I looked up at her. "What is this?" "Sign it," she said, her voice steadier now, like she had practiced those words. "Sign it and I'll explain everything." "You want me to marry you?" "Yes." The room felt smaller. "Emma, are you serious?" "If I'm not married by Saturday," she whispered, "I lose my son." The words hung in the air between us. "I didn't even know you had a child." "He's 3. His name is Owen." Her hands trembled as she told me about Jordan, the father who left when the baby was 6 months old. The silence that followed. The years she raised Owen alone. Then the sudden return. The expensive lawyer. The claim that she wasn't stable enough. That a small apartment and night classes made her unfit. "He's married now," she said. "Big house, money, they look perfect on paper. My lawyer says if I show up single, I lose." She looked at the license in my hands. "I need a husband." I stared at the line where my name would go. This was crazy, complicated, dangerous. But somewhere in the middle of her fear, I thought about a 3-year-old boy who didn't ask for any of this. "If I do this," I said slowly, "there have to be rules." She sat up straighter. "No lies," I said. "You tell me everything. And if this ever becomes real, it's because we both choose it, not because of ink on a page." Her eyes softened. "I wouldn't ask for more than you're willing to give." I picked up the pen. My hand hovered. Something inside me said if I closed that door tonight, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. So I signed. Thursday morning came too fast. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that signature. My name tied to hers in ink that couldn't be erased with regret. Emma texted at 6. Courthouse at 8. The sky was gray when I met her outside the King County building. She wore jeans and a simple blue sweater. Her hair was pulled back tight, like she was holding herself together the same way. We didn't talk much while we waited for the doors to open. What do you even say to someone you married 12 hours ago? Inside, the clerk handed us a form. Basic questions, names, birthdays, previous marriages. I checked yes. She checked no. We paid $70. The clerk stamped the paper and said congratulations without looking up. And just like that, it was done. No vows, no rings, no witnesses who cared. Just a stamp. We stepped back into the cool morning air. Cars rushed by like nothing had changed, but everything had. "Thank you," Emma said quietly. "I signed it," I replied, "so I'm in." She studied me like she wasn't sure whether to believe that. We drove to her apartment. The building was older but clean. 3 flights of narrow stairs. Her place was small, maybe 600 square feet. But it felt warm. There were paintings on the walls, Real ones. Bright colors and soft edges. The fridge was covered in children's drawings. Tiny sneakers sat by the door. "Owen's with my aunt," she said. "He'll be back this afternoon. You should meet him before the hearing." The thought made my stomach twist. I've built office towers, managed crews of 50 men, but meeting a 3-year-old suddenly felt harder than all of that. We sat at her kitchen table with coffee between us. She opened a folder full of papers. "My lawyer's meeting us tomorrow. We need our story straight." So we started building one. We ran into each other 2 months ago at a bookstore. We got coffee, we kept talking, we fell fast. We went over small details couples are supposed to know. Her favorite color was yellow. She hated mushrooms. She drank Earl Grey at night and painted when she couldn't sleep. I told her I ran every morning at 6, that I hadn't dated since my divorce, that my apartment felt too quiet most days. The more we talked, the less it felt like pretending. Around 3, there was a knock at the door. Emma froze for a second, then she opened it. A little boy stepped inside holding her aunt's hand. Messy brown hair, dinosaur shirt, big watchful eyes. Owen. He looked at me like I didn't belong there, and he was right. "This is Ryan," Emma said gently, kneeling down to his level. "He's going to be staying with us for a while." Owen didn't answer. He just walked past me and sat on the floor with a box of blocks. I stood there unsure. "Maybe you could help him," Emma whispered. So I sat down on the carpet, slow and careful. "I'm building a tower," Owen said without looking at me. "Mind if I help?" He thought about it, then handed me a red block. "This goes on the bottom." And just like that, I was building something fragile and tall with a child whose future depended on us. We built that tower in silence at first. Owen would hand me a block. I would place it where he told me. He took the job seriously, brow furrowed, tongue pressed to the side of his mouth when he concentrated. After a few minutes, he looked up at me. "Are you my mom's friend?" I glanced toward the kitchen. Emma was pretending to wash a mug, but she was watching us closely. "Yeah," I said gently. "I'm your mom's friend." He nodded, accepting that answer without question. Then he picked up a green block. "Do you like dinosaurs?" "I do," I said. "Which one's your favorite?" His whole face lit up. "T-Rex because he has big teeth." "That's a good reason," I said. The tower leaned a little to one side. Owen adjusted it carefully. When it finally toppled, he burst into laughter. The sound filled the small apartment in a way that felt bigger than the room. Later, when Emma called us to eat, Owen grabbed my hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. His fingers were small and warm. Something shifted in my chest right then. He didn't know about courtrooms or custody battles. He didn't know his father was trying to take him away. He just knew his tower had fallen and dinner was ready. After we ate, Emma gave him a bath. I could hear splashing in her tired voice telling him to stop soaking the floor. When she brought him out in pajamas, he walked straight over to me. "Will you read me a story?" I hesitated for half a second, then I nodded. Emma handed me a book about a bear who couldn't sleep. Owen climbed onto the couch beside me, leaning against my arm as I read. By the last page, his breathing had slowed. Emma carried him to his room. When she came back, she sat beside me on the couch. The rain had started again, tapping softly against the windows. "He likes you," she said. "That's good, right?" "It's very good." We sat there quietly, the apartment dim except for a lamp in the corner. Then Emma spoke again, softer this time. "I didn't just come to you because you're disconnected from my family." I turned to her. "I came because I remember who you are." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She folded her hands together. "Years ago, when I dropped out of college, everyone was angry, disappointed. Claire wouldn't even look at me. But you asked if I was okay. I barely remembered that conversation. You listened," she said. "You didn't try to fix me. You didn't lecture me. You just treated me like I mattered." Her eyes were tired but steady. When I needed someone to trust with Owen's life, I thought of that. The room felt very quiet. Somewhere between the blocks and the bedtime story, this had stopped feeling like paperwork. It felt like something heavier, something real beginning to take shape. Tuesday came faster than either of us were ready for. I woke up in the spare bedroom at Emma's place with a tight feeling in my chest. The kind you get before a storm, when the air feels too still. I put on the only suit I owned. It had been hanging in my closet for years, used mostly for weddings and one funeral. I smoothed the wrinkles with my hands, knowing it wouldn't make much difference. Emma was already in the kitchen when I walked out. She wore a gray suit that made her look older, more serious. but her hands were shaking as she poured coffee. "Let me," I said softly, taking the pot from her. Owen was still asleep. Emma's aunt would pick him up soon. No child should sit in a courtroom while adults argue over his life. We didn't say much while we drove. The courthouse looked colder than I remembered. Hard walls, bright lights, too clean. Emma's lawyer, Michelle, met us in the hallway. "Remember," she said calmly, "answer only what you're asked, stay steady." Inside, Jordan sat at a long table with his lawyer and his wife. He looked confident, comfortable, like he belonged there. I'd never met him before, but I knew enough. The judge entered, an older woman with tired eyes. Jordan's lawyer spoke first. He talked about Emma's small apartment, her evening classes, the time she'd been late picking Owen up. He made it sound like she was barely holding her life together. Then he turned to me. "Mrs. Torres recently married Mr. Beck," he said, "after 5 years of no contact. Convenient timing." The judge looked at me. "Mr. Beck, when did you reconnect?" 2 months ago, I said carefully. "We ran into each other." "And married shortly after?" "Yes." The lawyer leaned forward. "Isn't it true this marriage was done to improve her custody case?" My heart pounded, but my voice stayed steady. "No," I said. "I signed those papers because I wanted to be there for Emma and for Owen. You've known the child less than a week." "That's true," I said, "but I chose to show up. That matters." The judge raised a hand for silence. Emma took the stand next. She described mornings with pancakes, bedtime stories, the stuffed elephant Owen couldn't sleep without. When asked why she worked evenings, she said, "Because I need to. I'm doing my best." Then came the hardest question. "Wouldn't your son be better off in a larger home with more money?" Emma's voice broke, but she didn't look away. "Owen needs the person who has been there every day of his life. I stayed. That has to count for something." The room fell quiet. The judge nodded slowly. "We'll review everything," she said. "Decision by the end of the week." We walked out into the hallway and Emma's legs gave out. She sat down on a bench, shaking. I sat beside her, and for the first time since signing that paper, I understood how much this wasn't about pretending anymore. It was about staying. Waiting was harder than the courtroom. Wednesday passed, then Thursday. Every time Emma's phone buzzed, her shoulders jumped. She barely ate. She moved around the apartment like someone holding their breath underwater. Owen didn't notice the tension the way adults do. He built towers, he asked for snacks. He made dinosaur sounds that echoed down the hallway. Life, to him, was still simple. I tried to keep it that way. I made pancakes one morning, even though Emma only pushed hers around the plate. I sat on the floor and built another crooked tower with Owen. I read bedtime stories in a steady voice, even when my mind drifted back to that courtroom. Friday afternoon, the call finally came. Emma answered on the second ring. I watched her face while she listened. It went pale, then still. "She wants us in her chambers in an hour," Emma said after hanging up. The drive felt longer than it was. Owen was with Emma's aunt again. I hated that he didn't understand what was happening. Maybe that was a mercy. Jordan and his wife were already there when we arrived. He didn't look at us this time. The judge sat behind her desk, glasses low on her nose. "I've made my decision," she said. Emma's hand found mine. "Primary custody will remain with Emma Torres." Emma gasped. The sound was half sob, half breath returning after too long. I squeezed her hand. "Mr. Torres will have supervised visitation every other weekend," the judge continued. "He is the father. He has the right to build a relationship. But stability matters. And this child has it." Jordan muttered something under his breath, but it didn't matter anymore. It was done. Outside in the parking lot, Emma collapsed against me. She cried into my shoulder, her whole body shaking, but this time it was relief. "We won," she whispered. "He's staying." That night, after Owen was asleep, the apartment felt different. Lighter. Like someone had opened a window we didn't know was closed. Emma sat across from me on the couch. "You can go home now," she said quietly. "You did what you promised." I looked around at the small room, the toys, the paintings, the life we'd stepped into. "Do you want me to leave?" I asked. She hesitated. "No, I just don't want you to feel trapped." I shook my head. "I'm not here because of a court case anymore." The word surprised even me. I'm here because when I'm sitting at this table with you and Owen, it feels right. Emma's eyes filled, but she didn't look away. Something had shifted, and neither of us could pretend not to feel it. I didn't go back to my apartment that night. At first, it was practical. Owen needed routine. Emma needed rest. I told myself I was just staying until things settled. But weeks passed, and I kept finding reasons not to leave. I'd drive back to my place to grab more clothes, check the mail, water the lonely plant in the kitchen window. Each time I locked the door behind me, the silence inside that apartment felt heavier than it used to. Emma's place was small, cramped even, toys under the couch, paintbrushes soaking in jars by the sink, a stack of preschool drawings taped crooked on the fridge. But it felt alive. One evening, about 6 weeks after the hearing, I was giving Owen a bath. He had 2 toy boats crashing into each other, making dramatic explosion sounds. "Ryan," he said. "Yeah, buddy? Are you going to stay forever?" The question landed gently, but it stayed. "Would you like that?" I asked. He nodded, serious as could be. "I like when you're here. You make my mom smile." I had to look away for a second. "I like being here too," I told him. "Then you should stay forever," he said, like it was the easiest decision in the world. After he was asleep, I told Emma what he'd said. She laughed and cried at the same time. "He's not wrong," she whispered. "You do make me smile." "You make me smile too," I said. She looked at me differently then. Not like someone who needed help. Not like someone holding onto a rope. "I think I'm falling for you," she admitted softly. "And that scares me. This was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to be pretend." I moved a little closer. "I stopped pretending a while ago," I said. She searched my face. "Is it real?" "Yeah," I answered. "It's real." We kissed for the first time that night. Slow, careful, like we were both aware that something precious had grown quietly between us, and neither of us wanted to rush it. When we pulled back, she laughed through her tears. "We got married before we even kissed." "Yeah," I said. "We did everything backwards." She rested her head on my shoulder. "Maybe that's why it works." And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was standing on the outside of my own life. 3 months later, I gave notice on my apartment. There wasn't much to pack: a couch, a bed, a few boxes of books I hadn't opened in years. The place had never really been a home. It had just been somewhere to sleep. Emma and I squeezed my things into her small apartment. It was tighter now. Shoes by the door, my coffee mug beside her paintbrushes, Owen's toys somehow multiplying overnight. It felt crowded. It felt right. One Tuesday morning, while I was flipping pancakes, Owen looked up at me from the kitchen table. "Papa Ryan," he said casually, "can I have chocolate chips in mine?" The spatula froze in my hand. "What did you call me?" He suddenly looked unsure. "Is that okay? I can call you something else." I knelt beside him so we were eye to eye. "Papa Ryan," I said slowly, "is perfect." He grinned, and that was that. When Emma heard it later, she pressed her hand to her mouth and blinked back tears. We had a lot of those now. The good kind. Jordan kept his supervised visits. Every other Saturday, we dropped Owen off at a small building where a social worker watched from behind a desk. Owen never complained. He just held my hand a little tighter on the drive there. Spring came, and we started talking about finding a bigger place. Somewhere Owen could have his own room, maybe even a yard. One evening in April, after Owen was asleep, Emma turned to me on the couch. "I want a real wedding," she said. I smiled. "We're already married." "I know, but I want one where we stand up in front of everyone and choose each other out loud." So we planned a small ceremony in her aunt's backyard. Simple chairs, yellow flowers. Claire came, quiet but respectful. When she saw Owen holding my hand, something in her softened. Emma wore a yellow dress. Owen carried the rings with both hands like they were made of glass. When it was my turn to speak, I didn't read from paper. "7 months ago, you knocked on my door and asked me to trust you," I said. "I signed because something in me knew you were worth it. Today, I'm not standing here because of ink on a page. I'm here because I choose you, every day." Emma's voice shook when she answered. "When I came to your door, I was drowning," she said. "You didn't just throw me a rope, you stayed." We kissed while Owen clapped too loud and everyone laughed. Later that night, after the lights were off and the yard was quiet again, Emma and I sat on the porch steps. "You know," she said softly, "I was so scared you'd say no that night." "I almost did," I admitted. "But I saw how hard you were fighting for him. and I knew I wanted to be someone who stayed. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Love didn't show up the way I expected it to. It didn't come with flowers or music or careful planning. It came at midnight, soaked in rain, holding legal papers and hope. And sometimes, if you're brave enough to open the door, that's enough. If this story found a place in your heart, stay with us. There are always more quiet moments waiting to be told. It could be reflex, she cautioned softly.